Hey guys, Jeffrey here with Auto Alchemy. As you all may recall, for a little while there I was doing a series of videos based on the objective personality method of typing, which was created by Dave Superpowers. Please check out the YouTube channel. I think it's some pretty interesting stuff. So my goal with that project was to type these celebrities before they were actually typed in the class. That way I would have some sort of documentation that I'm a good student and I was learning well and I was beating Dave and Shan to the punch. And so I stopped working on that project for a couple of reasons. Probably the main reason was that the whole clip within a clip thing was a little too CPU intensive for my computer, anyhow. And second of all, while I felt reasonably confident that I was an ENTP, I wasn't exactly sure if I would come out as an ENTP under the parameters of that model. And so I kind of felt conflicted about trying to play this particular personality game when I wasn't even sure that I could apply the rules to myself in any kind of neutral, objective way. So it's like, do you even understand what you're doing? Maybe you should take a step back. Maybe you should process more, consume a little more information, and make sure you know what you're talking about. Because it's really easy to see other people in relation to who we are and then use that to sort of define our terms. But if we're not even sure that we're typing ourselves correctly, then that's a problem, right? Can I say it any better than that? I probably could say it better than that, but you'd have to sign up for my non-existent Patreon for that kind of insider knowledge. So yeah, I was pretty curious about how I would come out in the objective personality system. So I reached out to Dave and got the ball rolling. So I do feel somewhat obligated to acknowledge the fact that there's been a little bit of pushback in the typology community against the objective personality system. I'm not particularly interested in getting into all that, but I will say that all I'm going to say is that if we're genuinely concerned with what's true, then I think that we should embrace as many competing systems of thought as possible and just let them duke it out. Anyway, on to my results. I feel like I'm doing a 23andMe reveal, which I would like to do at some point, but not now. I wish I had an envelope though. So on screen, somewhere up here, I've listed my top contenders for what I thought my type was, and this is a list that I sent to Dave and Shan and Wingdings so that they could review it later on after they'd actually tried to type me, and then see how presumably awesome I was at self-typing. So from this list, you can see that I was reasonably sure about a few things. I was pretty certain that I was an ENTP or maybe an ENFP. I felt very confident that I am an any user, freaking wingdings. And I also felt pretty confident that I exhibit a pretty relative balance between self and tribe, thinking and feeling. Having dated a few ENFPs in my life, I didn't really think that resonated, but I didn't want to write it off completely, especially knowing that the objective personality system has, jumper types and there's a little more nuance to it compared to some other ways of thinking about this stuff. So that's why the jumper types are a little bit higher on my list. I didn't think that I would be a conventional ENFP if I were an ENFP at all. So I also figured that I was double feminine, and if you don't understand what that means in this context, basically the two sexual modalities are determined by first your sensing function, and second your extroverted decider, so FE or TE. And basically a feminine function is a little more fluid and movable, whereas a masculine function is solid and resolute. It doesn't want to waver at all. And it's good to keep in mind that there's always an equal yet opposite reaction going on. So if I had extroverted feeling and it were feminine, then my introverted thinking would be masculine, meaning I would be very steady and firm with my own, reasoning and chain of logic, but I would be willing to work with the tribe and their emotions in order to carry out these TI plans. I was also absolutely sure that I was blast last. And in the objective personality model, blast is a function combination which is concerned with teaching and expelling information and getting started. And I'm somebody who really likes to spin my wheels. I hate getting started. I know that ENTPs are typically thought of as starter types, but for me, that doesn't really resonate. I mean, I do start things more than I finish things, but typically I'm more in a space of consuming. I don't really I think of that as being sort of outside of this um, teleological kind of way of thinking. And I also hate teaching. I used to be a TA, and I thought that I wanted to be a philosophy professor or maybe an English professor at the time. But that was just so brutal. I never feel like I've internalized the information enough to share it. I never feel confident that I have a good grasp on what I'm understanding. The details are so slippery in my hands, and I just don't want to subject anybody to my poor teaching, which is, one of the big reasons that I wanted to join YouTube. I knew that this could be a nice arena for me to practice blasting, even though I didn't know it as that at the time. So yeah, that's the stuff that I felt pretty confident about. That's my list. I gave them 6 different options to kind of hedge my bets. Surely I got it right somewhere in there, right? No. But I'm just being dramatic because I was pretty close, to be honest. So here we go. And look at this dude. He's just so freaking handsome. I want to pinch his cheeks. So as you can see, I kind of killed it. The only thing that I had wrong was that I thought that I was sleep over blast. How did I mess that up? Am I not sleepy all of the time? Am I not exhausted? And yeah, that's kind of the point. The idea is that if you're always moving, always consuming something, always playing, always blasting, then inevitably, if you're not taking care of that particular animal, if you're not taking care of that particular function set, then the world is going to force your hand. In the same way that if you overgather information, you might suddenly look around your room and notice that everything is in sensory disarray, and you can't find, like, you might be trying to work on some sort of intuitive project, but you can't find the book that you were looking for. And it's like, I have to clean. I don't want to clean, but I have to clean. I have to get my stuff in order. So the world will force your hand if you're not careful. And that's why I'm so exhausted all the time. I do not in any way carve out a space to be reflective and process information and just really withdraw within myself. And that's a problem. So even though I claim to dislike blasting, I think it's really telling that I would rather make a YouTube video than sit and process all by my lonesome. And sleep energy was honestly what that dopamine fast video was all about, if you really get down to it. I wasn't allowed to distract myself, consume being my primary mode of existence. I wasn't allowed to do any of that. And I wasn't really allowed to play. There was no tribal interaction. So honestly, I could probably benefit from doing one of those fasts like every other week or something. And even with the dopamine fast, I had to convert it into a video idea. I had to make it into a product, which is kind of ironic because the whole thing is kind of about severing those addictions that I have. And the fact that I had to make it into a video just goes to show another reason why I'm blast over sleep. Um, because I have consume and blast in my top 3 animals, I communicate relatively well, and life for me is about information. I'm trying to figure things out and then gift them to the world. That's the idea anyway. I've got a lot of work to do. So now I want to say something about why I appreciate this method of typing and thinking about these things so much. I really appreciate the level of granularity available. Like, you don't have to dive down to that 512 level of typing. I know that some people think that you do, but you can limit yourself to 16 types or preferably 32, because I think that the jumpers really are such an essential ingredient and such a innovative way of opening up the code. I'm somebody who's very drawn to the Jungian idea of the integration of opposites and that tension that exists between 2 different poles of energy. And Myers-Briggs, as it's usually practiced, does give you some of that. So it says, hey, if you're a feeler, maybe you should start using that noggin a little bit more. Hey, are you intuitive? Why don't you go skydiving, you dolt? And then the cognitive function model expands on that a bit. And so, yeah, I think that the objective personality model gives you another really nuanced and subtle toolkit that you can use for thinking about your self-growth. So for example, I can look at people who are older than me, who are of my exact type, like Jordan Peterson or Michio Kaku, and I can say, what exactly have they done to cope with the various quirks and flaws of ENTP existence? And then I can look at somebody who is almost my exact opposite. So Joel Osteen, for example, someone that I absolutely deplore in every possible way. And I can ask myself, despite the negatively charged energy that I feel towards him, what can I learn from his mode of existence? Regardless of which side of the coin I'm looking at, there's a lot of work to be done here, despite how handsome I am. So that's all I've got. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.